Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're going to do something a little bit different today. If you're just joining us for the first time, thanks for stopping in. For the subscribers, we really appreciate you coming back. Emily and I are refurbishing our 1984 Tollycraft 43, so we're 48 feet length overall. And we purchased it last year, and we're going through an extensive kind of refit to get us ready to cruise full time when we're ready to retire in a few years. So if that's the kind of stuff that you're interested in, please subscribe and follow us along in our journey. We got a lot of boat work to do, but we're also, we got to take our first trip out the other week, which was fantastic to be out on the bay, and we hope to have several more adventures coming up. So I thought today I would talk about something that you hear people talk about a lot, which is their U.S. Coast Guard captain's license. So I have mine, and one of the things that often you don't find is a video on how to get it. And people talk about that they have it, but they don't really talk about the process that it takes to kind of go through it. So I thought today we'd do a real quick kind of video on what it takes and what you have to do. There are a couple different ways that you can do it. And not any one is better than the other, because the scores that you have to get are the same no matter which path you take. So let's just start with what it takes to get started. So you have to be 19 years or older. And then you have to be thinking about sea service time. So the captain's license is rated in 3 different levels, 25 tons or less, 50 tons or less, or 100 tons or less. All of them require 360 days of service on a vessel. To get the different tonnage, you have to spend different time on the vessel of weight. So depending on the size of your boat, meaning how much it actually weighs, the gross registered ton weight of your boat, and how much time you spend on it or spend on other boats of similar size, will determine which tonnage license that you are eligible for, given the sea time that you have. You can always upgrade if you get a bigger boat or you spend more time on a boat that's larger. And once you meet those sea service times, you can upgrade your license from 25 ton to 50, or from 50 ton to 100. So for those that are just pleasure boating, they want to have their captain's license, it's something that I really encourage all of you to get, because the things that you learn through that course and then apply later while you're operating the boat on the water not only makes it safer for you, but it makes it safer for everybody else. So let's get right down to it. So the minimum requirements: you have to be 19 years older. You have to pick the sea service time that you feel like that you're going to fit most into. So that's the 25 ton or less, 50 ton or less, or 100 ton or less. All these things can be found on the U.S. Coast Guard's website, and the National Maritime Center all have checklists and information. Just Google it and it'll tell you exactly what you need to do. That sea time can take several years. So for a lot of us who are just on the boat, here and there, that sea service time can take a long time, 2, 3, 4 years, depending on how frequently you're on your boat. Just remember that no matter what you do, 90 days of that sea time has to be within the last 3 years to make sure that it's relevant and fresh. If you keep a boat log like we do, the boat log is an easy way to kind of go back over the last 3 to 5 years and try and figure out how much time you've actually spent. The next thing you have to do is take a Coast Guard approved course. Now that can be an online course through someplace like the Mariners Learning Institute, or it can be a sit-down in-class course that is in your local area. So depending on where you live, especially if you live near the water, which if you have a boat, most of us do, they have captain's courses pretty frequently throughout the season. They're typically 2 weeks of class time where you go through all the different elements, where rules of the road in particular is one of the biggest challenges. Most of the testing requires 90% or better. If you do the reason why rules of the road is the hardest is because you have to follow and understand both U.S. and international rules, and sometimes they're different depending on the circumstance. So you have to be very, very careful about where you are and what you're doing, and the rules of the road really define those things for you. And it's just a lot. There's a lot of elements. It's one of the biggest chapters. There's so many things to remember. You just have to take your time and use flashcards and do all the things that they tell you to do. So some of the other things, so we talked about you have to be 19 years or older. You have to have a sea service time of whatever tonnage that you're looking for. You have to take a Coast Guard approved course, whether it's online or whether or not it's sitting in classroom. You have to have a current first aid and CPR card. I'm a paramedic, so that was really easy for me because it's part of my certification that I have to have. I have to have first aid and CPR, so I took a picture of my paramedic certification and my first aid and CPR card that goes with it and sent that in. You also have to have a TWIC card or a Transportation Workers Identification card. Now you can either have it, like I already had mine before I applied, or you can be in the application process. You just have to be able to demonstrate either that you have it by sending them a copy of it or a copy of your current application. You have to pass the drug test or be in a current drug testing program through your work. Like I have a random drug testing program through work, and I just sent them what our random drug testing policy is. It just ensures that you're drug-free. And then you have to apply for a medical certification. You have to get in a physical exam that follows the Coast Guard's medical certification. That all goes in with your application. Then you have to fill that application out. That application can be kind of confusing because the language has to be very specific and very specific circumstances. So you can either use Google, you can use a friend who already has a captain license, or you can pay someone to help you. All the information there is available on YouTube. There's a bunch of videos on how to move through those forms. So I encourage you, if you're going to go through that process, that you take advantage of those things. You have to pay the application fee, which is $145. That has to be paid through pay.gov. You have to get a receipt and attach that with a copy. Attach a copy of that receipt with your application when you submit it. I encourage you to go to the National Maritime Center's website. They have checklists for everything that goes step by step through the things that you need. It'll make the process a lot easier than if you're just trying to figure it out on your own. And then once it's all done, you basically can either email it through a secure document, or you can mail it to the closest regional exam center. So for me, I live in Virginia. The closest regional exam center for me was Baltimore, and I sent it up there. So now that we've talked about what you have to do, you got to get your sea time in. You got to be a U.S. citizen. You got to be 19 years or older. You got to take an approved captain's course and pass it with the equivalency that you need. You have to have a CPR card, first aid card, medical certificate, TWIC card or TWIC card application, and you have to pay the fees. And you have to pass the drug test. So once all that's done, now let's talk about the time. So when I first put all my stuff together, I figured I'd send it in, someone would take a look at it, and then all of a sudden I'd get it back and we'd be good to go. And it doesn't work out that way. So once they receive it, so once the National Maritime or the Regional Exam Center receives your exam, it takes about 2 or 3 weeks for them to go through it to make sure all the paperwork is right. They will tell you when they receive it, and you'll get an email from them when it's approved to move to the next step, which basically means that it's complete. Or they'll send you an email saying that there's something wrong or something missing. From there, it takes about 41 days. So we're 2 to 3 weeks in, depending on processing time. Once it's been approved, it goes to credentialing, and it can take up to 41 days for them to assign it to a credentialing officer. For me, it took exactly 41 days before they assigned it to somebody, and then it can take up to a week for someone to review the credentials. There's also a 3 to 4 week wait for your medical certificate to be sent to the medical certificate to be evaluated. Once it goes there, it can be up to 18 days before someone evaluates before it gets sent to an evaluator. Once it gets sent to an evaluator, it can take up to a week for them to evaluate it to make sure that it's correct. Like I said, the system will email you. It's painfully slow, and you can chat with the National Maritime Center, and you can check your status of your application online through their portal. It's pretty easy. It just takes a while. So that course, you either spend 2 weeks in a classroom, or you can spend up to a year doing the online version if that's how you choose. Once you get through all that process and you take all the tests and you pass everything, now you have basically 2 months that you have to wait before your document gets approved, and then they send it to you. So it isn't just as easy as taking a class, and each one of your states, no matter where you're from, is going to have a boater safety class, which your state requires you to have. If you get insurance in your state, they're going to require you to have it. And you can take the U.S. Coast Guard approved courses and get your certificate, but that doesn't mean that you're a Coast Guard approved captain. That just means that you passed the Coast Guard approved class. You have to have the sea time and all of the other things before you can actually get this orange book that everyone wants to have. And it's a big deal. I mean, those courses, they're difficult from the standpoint that there's a lot of material that you have to remember and be able to regurgitate. And the tolerances for passing those classes is very, very low, meaning that you have to do very well on your tests. And like I said, most of them require a 90% score on the 5 different sections that you have to take a test on. And I got through it the first time without having any trouble. They do allow some retesting, but I implore you, if you're going to invest the amount of time to get through this process, take the time to study and make sure that when it comes exam time that you're ready. Now, there are a bunch of forms that you'll need, and I will include these in the description below. The first one is the Coast Guard 719B, and that's the actual captain's license application. You'll also need a 719C, which is the drug disclosure form. So if you have had some drug challenges in your past, you have to disclose that. The next form is a 719K, which is your medical certificate application. It goes through that. You got to take that to a doctor, a U.S. Coast Guard approved physician, or someone who will sign off that you meet all of those elements. It's basically a large physical exam that says that you're capable of being a captain on a vessel. You need 719P, which is your drug testing requirement. So either you can get a drug test or prove that you're in an approved drug testing program and submit that. And then the 719S, which is your sea service time. And you can have as many of those forms for as many vessels that you've been on. If you own the vessels, then you are the master of that vessel and you can sign off on your sea time. If you do not own the vessel, you have to have an approved captain sign off on your sea time on that vessel. So if you're there with your spouse and your spouse is a captain and you're trying to get your U.S. Coast Guard captain's license, he or she can sign off on your sea time. Again, like I said, the other things you have to have: copy of your CPR, first aid class, copy of your course completion certificates, and your test scores, your TWIC card or your TWIC card application, and your pay.gov receipt for the fees. I hope the video kind of shedded some light on what it takes to get your U.S. Coast Guard captain's license and kind of some of the steps that you have to go through to get it. It's like I said, it's a great process. It's good for you. It's good for the other boaters. It's good for building experience and knowledge that you can then translate to operations on the water. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe and join us as we continue our upgrades and travels with Providence. Have a good day.